Let's talk about one of the most incredible ideas in all of neuroscience, and it's this. The brain you have right now is not the brain you were born with. It's not even the brain you had last year. It is a living, dynamic thing, and it's constantly being reshaped by, well, everything you do.
So let me just ask you point blank. Is your brain fixed for life? Once you become an adult, are you just stuck with the hardware you've got? For a really, really long time, the scientific answer to that was a pretty firm yep.
And this wasn't just some random guess. This idea came from the top. We're talking about Santiago Ramon y Cajal, basically the father of modern neuroscience. He believed that an adult brain was like a finished piece of art, something to admire, but something that doesn't change. Once the connections were there, that was it, game over.
Well, it turns out that foundational idea was completely wrong. I mean, not just a little bit wrong, but about as wrong as you can get. What we know today is that our brains stay plastic, they stay changeable, they stay adaptable for our entire lives.
Okay, so how on earth does that actually work? How does the brain physically rewire itself? Let's zoom way in, down to the microscopic level, and take a look. The magic word for all of this is neuroplasticity. It's just a fancy term for the brain's incredible built-in ability to change its own structure and its own function. Think of it like this. Your brain has its own software that lets it install updates and upgrades based on everything you do, everything you learn, and everything that happens to you. And this right here, this is where all the action happens. It's called the synapse, that tiny, tiny little gap between two brain cells. It's not like a hard wire connecting them. It's more like a communication hub, passing signals from one cell to the next. And that little microscopic space, that is the arena where learning physically happens.
And the whole process really comes down to a super simple rule. Use it or lose it. So when you practice a new skill or remember something, the synapses involved fire over and over again. That process is called long-term potentiation, LTP for short, and it makes that connection stronger, faster, more efficient. But on the flip side, if you stop using a pathway, something called long-term depression, or LTD, kicks in, and that connection just gets weaker and weaker over time.
So that's the theory. But what does this look like out in the real world? Well, let's check out one of the most famous, most powerful examples of neuroplasticity ever studied, the London taxi driver experiment.
See, to get a license in London, taxi drivers have to pass this notoriously difficult test called the knowledge. It means they have to memorize a maze of over 25,000 streets. So some researchers had this brilliant idea. Let's compare their brains to London bus drivers. Bus drivers have similar stress levels, they drive all day, but they only follow a few fixed routes. It was the perfect natural experiment.
And the results were just incredible. MRI scans showed that the taxi drivers had way more gray matter, that's the brain's processing power, in a specific part of the hippocampus, which is the brain's headquarters for spatial memory. And here's the amazing part. The longer a driver had been on the job, the bigger this part of their brain was. The bus drivers? No changes like that at all.
Just as the researchers themselves put it, the physical changes in the brain weren't because of stress or just driving around. No, the change was specifically tied to the intense, constant use of that complex spatial knowledge. Their brains literally grew to meet the challenge. Now, this isn't just some weird fact about London cabbies. The exact same principle is at play when you learn to play the guitar, or speak a new language, or even learn how to juggle. Every single new skill you pick up is physically changing the structure of your brain.
Scientists kind of break this down into two main types. First, there's experience-expectant plasticity. This is how a young brain gets wired up. It basically expects to see light and hear language, and it uses those universal human experiences to build its core systems. But then there's experience-dependent plasticity, and this one is all about your unique life. It's how your brain changes based on the specific things you choose to do and learn. I just love this analogy from researcher Adriana Galvan. She says the young brain's plasticity is like building a house from the ground up. But plasticity in an adult brain, that's more like remodeling the house you already have. You're not starting from scratch, you're modifying and improving the structure that's already there.
Which brings us to the most important part of this whole discussion, you. Because all the science, from the tiny synapse all the way to the London taxi driver, applies directly to your brain right here, right now.
So think about it. Every experience, every single book you read, every new skill you practice, every tough problem you solve, is actively building a different brain. This idea is so empowering. It means you can learn new things later in life, you can break old habits by letting those neural pathways weaken, and it's even how people can recover after a brain injury. So the question isn't if your brain can change. The only real question is, what are you going to choose to change it with next?